Hi everyone! Those of you who are familiar with my channel may have noticed a bit of a trend in terms of the content I tend to upload. As you can see, I have a good few videos covering races from the 2000s, the 1990s, the 1980s, and even one from 1973, but somehow no races at all from the 2010s or 2020s. So why is this? Do I just hate modern F1? Well, first of all, no, I absolutely don't. F1 today is in great shape, at least in terms of the on-track product, and with the extreme unpredictability of races in the latter half of 2024, I think we could be entering a golden era if 2025 continues the trend. The actual reason I haven't been uploading races from the 2010s or later is because I simply haven't been allowed to. Long-time viewers of this channel may remember that I did actually once cover the 2015 Hungarian Grand Prix in just my second ever episode of F1RR. However, it ended up being flagged by anti-copyright and blacklisted from both YouTube and Dailymotion, the backup site I use for videos that get taken down from my YouTube channel by the pesky FOM bots. You can no longer see that video anywhere on the internet. I decided then that it was too risky to upload reviews of modern F1 races, as I didn't much fancy making videos for literally no one to see. However, that was 5 years ago, and I'm feeling bold. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, enjoy it while it lasts, as it could get taken down at literally any moment. And if you're watching this on Dailymotion, well, it happened again. So, without further ado, let's take a massive gamble and revisit the 2013 Korean Grand Prix. The Korean Grand Prix was a short-lived event that ran from 2010 through to 2013, making what you're about to see the last example of its kind. It took place in Yeongam, which is in South Korea, just in case I somehow needed to specify which Korea we're in. The Grand Prix was actually part of an ambitious project for F1 and Korea in general, as the plan was initially to have a town and business district spring up around the circuit to support the country's ever-growing population, but for various reasons this never happened. As for the track itself, I actually quite like it, and I think it has a lot of character. I still remember it quite well, despite being nothing more than a wee lass when this was on the calendar. It's still used for various national championships, although the grandstands are never even close to being this full nowadays. In terms of the grid, runaway championship leader Sebastian Vettel took his third pole position in a row, unsurprising considering that he was on a 3-race win streak in the dominant RB9 Renault. Alongside him was the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, and Lotus's Romain Grosjean was actually third on the grid in front of Nico Rosberg's Mercedes. Then came the Ferrari of Alonso and Massa, and if you're wondering where Vettel's teammate Webber was, he was actually down in 13th place due to a grid penalty. Mark had been a naughty boy at the previous Grand Prix, hitching a ride on Fernando Alonso's Ferrari after the race and picking up his third reprimand of the season. When the race began, Vettel predictably made the best start and led into turn 1 ahead of Hamilton and Grosjean, and just behind them Massa lost out to a dive from the rookie Esteban Gutierrez. Grosjean then slipstreamed Hamilton all the way down the long back straight, actually getting second place as they braked for turn 3. However, watch as they go 4 wide in the background with Massa, Alonso, Hülkenberg and Gutierrez, and then Massa panics and slams on the brake to avoid hitting Rosberg. Massa spun, Alonso ran wide in avoidance, causing Gutierrez to hit Button, and Paul di Resta got his front wing crunched by Kimi Räikkönen in the melee. Mark Webber took to the grass and actually cut the corner quite dramatically, but since it was between that and ending up with a face full of carbon fibre, I think we can forgive him for that. Massa rejoined at the back, and amazingly, not only were there no retirements, but no one even required a pit stop. Very surprising considering the amount of wing damage sustained by Button and di Resta at least. At the end of the first lap, the order was Vettel, Grosjean, Hamilton, Rosberg and Hülkenberg, who had had a fantastic start in the Sauber. As Vettel got away out in front, Grosjean was already under threat for second, but the real fight was with his teammate Räikkönen, who was busy getting past Daniel Ricciardo for 7th. Admittedly, Kimi did have a tyre advantage, but that just makes this move all the more important for Kimi, who had lost out to the Toro Rosso at the start. As you can see, he just about made the move cleanly, but Ricciardo came back at him, but had to settle for 8th. Behind that fight, another one was raging between Pastor Maldonado and Mark Webber. Maldonado had made an awesome start to get up to P9 from 17th on the grid without hitting anyone, but his Williams was no match for the Red Bull of Webber, who came through easily peasily, lemon squeezily. One of the most notable features of the Yeongam circuit was the long back straight leading into a hairpin that provided so much action every time Formula 1 raced here. Here's Kimi Räikkönen using it to his advantage and getting up the inside of Fernando Alonso and making the move for 6th place. Fernando came back at him on the exit of the corner, as he could often do here, but Kimi kept the inside line again and held off the Ferrari driver. In all honesty, that straight and hairpin used to terrify me. So many times there, drivers would go for overtakes coming into the braking zone, only to misjudge the car in front of them and nearly spear into their side. We're lucky we never got a truly serious T-bone impact through there, just some minor shunts from time to time. Due to the damage he sustained on the first lap, Jenson Button had decided to make his first pit stop quite early, and as well as changing his front wing, he also changed onto a new set of tyres. These tyres appeared to work extremely well for him, leading to the McLaren driver setting several fastest laps in a row, and before long this was catching the attention of the leaders. Here we see Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso both pitting quite early to get off the softs, which by this point were already reaching the end of their operating windows. By the way, you may also have noticed that Guido van der Garde was hit with a drive-through penalty, and this was due to him apparently forcing Jules Bianchi off the road. Unfortunately, this wasn't caught by the broadcast, but clearly the battle of the backmarkers was in full swing here too. Back to the pit-stopping leaders, here's Romain Grosjean coming out of the lane, and look how close he is now to Lewis Hamilton! Hamilton got DRS and slipstreamed the Lotus driver, who made his move of defence really late and nearly took them both onto the grass. Remember, this is the battle that had been for second place before the pit stops. Now you see Hamilton trying again on the exit, but Grosjean held the inside line and forced Lewis to go for a switchback manoeuvre, which he almost pulled off before being halted by the chicane. This is genuinely really good defensive driving from Grosjean, who's placing his car exactly where it needs to be to hold off arguably the GOAT of Formula 1. In all honesty, it baffles me how some of Romain's best drives happened so early in his F1 career, because, what happened after that? Where did all of that potential go? I honestly have no idea. Meanwhile, here's Vettel coming into the pits from the lead, kicking up a bit of dust as he goes. This very briefly elevated Mark Webber to the lead, but only until he made his pit stop a lap later, meaning he never officially led a lap. Vettel was so far ahead by this point that he took the lead back immediately, keeping him on track for a Grand Chelem, which he had also scored at the previous Grand Prix. With that being said, Grosjean and Hamilton definitely got closer to Seb during the pit cycle. They're nearly within DRS range of Seb as they pass Daniel Ricciardo, who's yet to stop. Maybe we will have a race on after all. Nope, he's checked out again. Thus was the story of the 2013 season. Here we see a battle for 5th place between Nico Hülkenberg and Fernando Alonso, who were both being chased down by Räikkönen and Webber. Sauber had recently signed a contract extension with Ferrari, meaning Ferrari would continue to provide engines for them until 2018, and there were actually a lot of talks about Hülkenberg going to the Scuderia. Obviously that ended up falling through when Kimi Räikkönen rejoined Ferrari, but there are surely some alternate timelines out there where that never happened and Nico was seen in Maranello red. By the way, you just saw a graphic about Sergio Perez being investigated for forcing Paul di Resta off the road. That refers to this minor coming together, which ultimately resulted in no further action and no penalty. Then again, when have the FIA ever cared about forcing another driver off the road? That kind of seems like the accepted way of racing nowadays. Just ask Max and Lando. The first retirement of the race came on lap 25 as Paul di Resta lost control and crashed, giving him his 5th DNF in a row. This was a real low point in Paul's F1 career and signalled the beginning of the end at a time when many drivers were fighting over just a few seats. There was no safety car, but there was another dramatic incident a few laps later as Nico Rosberg's nose assembly collapsed while he was making an overtake. That is an extremely dangerous situation, and Nico was unbelievably lucky not to run over his own front wing like Alonso had done at Sepang that same year. Nico was forced to pit, dropping all the way down to 12th position. Remarkably though, he continued to fend off his teammates all the way back to the pit lane. I wouldn't have been going that fast with my front wing scraping along the asphalt, that's for sure. And look at this, now Lewis has made his second stop and come out behind Kimi Räikkönen. He won't be thanking Nico for that. Kimi meanwhile had been on a real charge after starting 9th on the grid, and he was now a genuine contender for a podium, having jumped several drivers in the pit windows. Also, there's Alonso passing Ricciardo, who once again was staying out longer than the others around him. Another driver to jump Lewis was Mark Webber, and whoa! That's a tyre deflating at high speed for Sergio Perez, who remarkably kept control of his car. I'm actually not sure he realised what had happened initially, as he too kept on the throttle just as Rosberg had done with his nose failure. Behind him, Lewis Hamilton got back past Mark Webber, and he did so just in time as the safety car was deployed to deal with the debris on the straight. Thinking fast, a whole bunch of cars made their second pit stop, including Vettel and Grosjean from the front. Mark Webber also pitted again, which is a little bizarre since he'd literally just done that, but perhaps he was nervous about any debris he might have run over. As for Checo, he finally made it back to the pits and the team replaced his tyres and also his front wing, which was damaged in the incident. Okay Checo, hold still, we just need to check over your car. Here's the restart then, and the order was Vettel, Grosjean, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Hülkenberg and Alonso. 7th was Button despite the early pit stop, and 8th was Rosberg despite the nose failure. The safety car had really helped both of them, as it was basically a reset of the race. Every car dumped pretty much all of their curves as they flew towards the hairpin, and Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber actually managed to pass Lewis Hamilton. Can you imagine that happening today? Then there was a spin and a collision! That's Adrian Sutil spinning and backing his car right into the side of Mark Webber, whose day was just refusing to get any better. And it would get worse too, look. Yes, that Red Bull really is on fire. Clearly the collision must have punched a hole in an oil line. Oh well, at least the thermal camera was there to answer the age-old question of, is fire hot? As it turns out, yes it is. With Mark safely out of the car, the attention then turned to the Lotuses, who were scrapping for second, and as you can see, it was Raikkonen who got the better of his teammate up the inside into turn 1. However, there was then quite a strange moment as the whole field of F1 cars suddenly found an unexpected vehicle in their way, potentially causing a bit of a dangerous situation. For reference, that is not the safety car. That's a fire car, which is only supposed to be deployed after the cars are safely down to safety car speeds. Obviously the safety car was then deployed, albeit at the back of the field, and the fire car driver could then go home and boast to their family that they had in fact briefly led the Grand Prix. When the race restarted again, Fernando Alonso slipstreamed Lewis Hamilton on the straight, getting up into 5th position. Or not! That's Hamilton braking later and getting right back through at the hairpin. Here's Alonso trying it again on the next straight, and surely this one will work. Nope! Lewis cut back inside him and kept that 5th position. Awesome racing between two world champions with such a long-standing rivalry. Now here's a battle to unpack. Ricciardo has passed Maldonado for 9th, leaving Pastor to be attacked by Gutierrez, Massa, Perez and Bottas all in one go. Gutierrez attacked first, still looking for his first point in F1, but he ran wide and pushed Maldonado out. Then Perez got a run on Massa as Maldonado came back, and the Ferrari leant heavily on the side of the McLaren. A few corners later, Gutierrez went for yet another move on Maldonado, this time an extremely brave one into turn 10, and poor Pastor started dropping positions like a stone. Massa went up to 10th with a great double move, Gutierrez got up to 11th, Perez gained 12th, and then Bottas slotted in ahead of his teammate in 13th. Phew. No relief for Sauber though. As we move into the late stages of the race, it was a nervy time to be one of their drivers. Hülkenberg is still under intense pressure from Hamilton for 4th place, but as you could see, he was still hanging tough. As for Gutierrez, he had the McLaren of Sergio Perez for company, who cut back on him and eventually slipstreamed his way through to 11th. Here we go again, look, Hülkenberg versus Hamilton, and Lewis gets through on the inside! However, look at the traction that Sauber gets out of the corner, and he's back through before even opening the DRS. Now Lewis has Fernando Alonso to worry about, and even Jenson Button, who was right at the back of the pack after the first few laps. Jenson pulling out a Canada 2011 style comeback here. Fernando chopped and chopped again, and look at him waving his hands in frustration as he can't quite get past Hamilton. Terrific stuff. Hamilton tried again a lap later, but still had no luck. With the lap still ticking away and the tyres graining, Nico Rosberg was able to pass Jenson Button for 7th place. This shows you just how important the DRS was in this race, as Nico had had no chance when Jenson still had DRS from Alonso. Meanwhile, talking of no chance, the two Toro Rossos of Ricciardo and Verne both retired from the race with brake troubles. I tell you what, thank goodness they were able to stop in a safe place rather than having their brakes go into turn 3 or 4. In fact, thank goodness they were able to stop at all. Also out of the race were both Force Indias, after Sutil's car finally succumbed to its damage from earlier. In the end though, there was no stopping Sebastian Vettel as the dominant driver came through to win for the 4th time in a row. Following him home were the 2 Lotuses of Raikkonen and Grosjean, with Kimi having fought his way up from 9th on the grid. In 4th place was Nico Hülkenberg, just 1 place off the podium, which would take him another 12 years to achieve. This video is actually being recorded just a few weeks after Nico finally scored that long-awaited podium for Sauber at the British Grand Prix, and I have to say that I am so happy for the guy. What perseverance and determination. 5th place at the end was Lewis Hamilton, who held off Alonso and Rosberg but just couldn't crack the Sauber of Hülkenberg. 8th was Jenson Button, driving a pretty strong race after dropping to the back early with damage. 9th place was a disappointed Felipe Massa, and the final point in 10th went to Sergio Perez, who narrowly denied his countryman Esteban Gutierrez of what would have been his first F1 point. 17 cars saw the checkered flag in total, although 20 were classified due to the late DNFs of Sutil, Ricciardo and Verne. Guys, before I give this race a score, I want to let you know that I have a daily motion channel where I upload all the videos that get taken down from YouTube by the pesky FOM bots. While I accept that FOM owns the rights to the race footage I use, I believe that all of my videos fall under fair use due to the high levels of parody, commentary and review, and I always encourage people to watch Formula 1 live in order to better appreciate this great sport. Sadly, this isn't always enough. I also occasionally stream on Twitch, where you can chat to me live, so I've included the links to both my Dailymotion and my Twitch channel in the description of this video. Thank you. I gave the Grand Prix an 8.3 out of 10 overall, with the 2 bonus points coming courtesy of the underdog success stories, such as Lotus's 2-3 finish and Hülkenberg's 4th, and the Yeongam track, which was never used again in F1. As much as I do think there are too many Grands Prix nowadays, Korea is one that I have to admit I do kind of miss. I would quickly like to apologise for how long this video took me to make, but a lot has been happening in my personal life recently. I've started a new job, I've moved in with my partner, and on top of all of that, this video has corrupted several times. I just hope it's allowed to stay on YouTube now, but we'll see in due time. I gave the Driver of the Day award for Best Driver to Sebastian Vettel, who led every lap of the race on his way to a Grand Chelem, the 4th and final one of his legendary career. I'll give the Inouye Trophy for Worst Driver to Paul di Resta for crashing out of his 4th race in a row. Drive safely guys, and I'll see you next time.